I'm the kind of person who meal preps. I'm talking slow-cooked burriya, pan-seared gnocchi with sage butter, Thai green curry from scratch. So when someone at my new job started stealing my lunch, they weren't just stealing food, they were stealing a masterpiece. And I decided it was time for the artist to get her revenge. My lunch hour is a sacred ritual. As a graphic designer at a mid-sized, aggressively modern marketing firm, my day is a blur of Pantone colors, impossible client demands, and the soul-crushing hum of an open-plan office. That 1 hour, from noon to 1, is my escape. It's my time to unplug from the creative hive mind, pop in my earbuds, and savor something I've spent hours crafting. Cooking is my meditation, my creative outlet outside the rigid confines of brand guidelines. My Tupperware containers weren't just holding leftovers, they were holding tiny, curated moments of joy. The first time it happened, I assumed it was a mistake. It was my third week at Innovate Creative. I'd made a beautiful, vibrant quinoa salad with roasted sweet potatoes, black beans, corn, and a cilantro lime vinaigrette that would make you weep. I went to the communal fridge, a sleek stainless steel behemoth that was always crammed with sad-looking yogurts and energy drinks, and my container was gone. I checked every shelf, behind the giant tub of protein powder that belonged to some sales guy and the wilting kale that had been there since my first day. Nothing. I felt a prickle of annoyance. Maybe someone grabbed it by accident? It was a distinctive glass container, but hey, mistakes happen. I sighed and spent $12 I couldn't really afford on a depressing prepackaged sandwich from the cafe downstairs. It tasted like disappointment and stale bread. The next week, it happened again. This time, it was my slow cooker pulled pork with a side of creamy macaroni and cheese. I had been smelling it all morning, the rich, smoky aroma faintly wafting from the container even when cold. I was practically salivating by 11:50 a.m. I went to the fridge. Gone. Vanished. Poof. This wasn't a mistake. Two identical glass containers, 2 weeks in a row? No, this was deliberate. This was a heist. A culinary crime. My annoyance morphed into a slow-burning anger. Who does that? Who just takes someone else's food? It's one of the most fundamental rules of civilized society. You don't steal someone's lunch. It's barbaric. I started labeling my containers. Big, Sharpie written letters, Chloe's lunch. Do not eat. I'm serious. It felt childish, but I was getting desperate. For a glorious 2 weeks, it worked. My pan-seared salmon and my chicken pad thai remained untouched. I started to relax, thinking maybe the thief had moved on or been scared off. Then came the burya. I'd spent 6 hours on a Sunday simmering beef with chilies and spices until it was fall-apart tender. I packed it with fresh tortillas, diced onions, and cilantro. The aroma alone was intoxicating. I practically skipped to the fridge at noon, my stomach rumbling in anticipation. The container was there, but it was empty. The monster had scraped it clean and put the empty container back on the shelf. That, right there, was a declaration of war. It was no longer just theft, it was a power move. A deeply personal, soul-crushing I can do whatever I want, and you can't stop me. My blood ran cold, then hot. I stood in front of that open fridge, staring at my violated Tupperware, and felt a wave of pure, unadulterated rage wash over me. I looked around the office. Everyone was typing away, headphones on, lost in their own worlds. One of these people, one of my smiling, good morning saying colleagues, was a sociopath. A food-stealing, soulless monster. My first logical step was HR. I scheduled a meeting with Brenda, a woman in her late 40s whose office was filled with an alarming number of cat-themed motivational posters. Hang in there, one proclaimed, featuring a kitten dangling from a branch. I wanted to tell the kitten to just let go. I explained the situation calmly and professionally. Someone has been repeatedly stealing my lunch from the communal fridge. Brenda steepled her fingers, a look of mild concern on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh dear," she said, her voice dripping with practiced, insincere empathy. "Are you sure you're not just misplacing it?" I blinked. "Yes, Brenda. I'm sure. They ate my buria and put the empty container back. I don't think I misplaced the food into the thief's stomach." "Well," she sighed, "we can't go around accusing people, Chloe. That would create a hostile work environment. Have you tried labeling your food?" "Yes," I said through gritted teeth, "with my name in giant letters." She hummed, tapping a pen on her desk. "The best I can do is send out a general email reminding everyone about respecting shared spaces. We don't want to single anyone out. The most important thing is to maintain a positive and collaborative office culture." A general email. That was her solution. I left her office feeling utterly defeated and incandescent with rage. The system was broken. The system was designed to protect the lazy and the entitled, not the victims. Brenda wasn't there to solve problems. She was there to prevent lawsuits. My stolen lunch wasn't a lawsuit. It was just a casualty of positive and collaborative office culture. That's when I realized I was on my own. If I wanted justice, I'd have to serve it myself. And it was going to be served cold. Or, in this case, volcanically hot. My first step was to identify the culprit. I started watching. I became a detective of the break room. I noticed who lingered by the fridge, who conveniently forgot their lunch on the days my best meals went missing. My gaze quickly fell upon one prime suspect, Kevin. Kevin was a sales bro, straight from Central Casting. Mid-30s, perfectly coiffed hair, aggressively white teeth, and a laugh that was more of a bray. He wore shirts that were always one button too tight and loafers with no socks. He strutted around the office like he owned the place, his voice booming on sales calls about synergizing deliverables and leveraging assets. He was the kind of guy who called women sweetheart and thought it was a compliment. He was also perpetually hungry. I started to notice the pattern. On Mondays, when I brought in my less aromatic salads, my food was safe. But on Wednesdays, when I brought in leftover spicy sausage pasta, Kevin would be lurking in the kitchen around 11:30, complaining loudly that he'd been so slammed he forgot to pack a lunch. Then, like clockwork, my pasta would disappear, and he'd be conspicuously absent from his desk during the lunch hour, probably eating my food in his car like the coward he was. He never commented on my food to my face, but I'd see him glance at my desk when I was eating, a flicker of something envy, entitlement in his eyes. He was my guy. I was sure of it. Now I just needed to make him pay. My revenge couldn't be simple. It had to be a slow burn, a multi-act play of culinary cruelty. It had to be a masterpiece. Phase 1: The Scoville Onslaught. My first move was designed to be a painful, yet deniable, lesson. I chose my weapon, the ghost pepper. I found a bottle of pure ghost pepper extract online, complete with a warning label that looked like it belonged on a container of nuclear waste. It was perfect. The following week, I prepared a gorgeous-looking chicken and chorizo paella. The saffron rice was a beautiful golden hue, studded with peas, red peppers, and generous chunks of chicken and sausage. It smelled divine. I packed a normal, delicious portion for myself in a separate, smaller container. Then, I prepared Kevin's special serving in my usual large glass dish. I carefully mixed 3 drops of the ghost pepper extract into one corner of the paella, the corner I knew he'd likely dig into first. 3 drops didn't sound like much, but according to the internet, it was enough to make a grown man question all his life choices. I placed the booby-trapped paella in the fridge, my heart thumping with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was it. No turning back. At 12:05 p.m., I watched from the corner of my eye as Kevin did his usual pre-lunch strut to the kitchen. He opened the fridge, lingered for a moment, and then walked away empty-handed. My stomach dropped. Did he not take it? But then, 5 minutes later, he sauntered back, looked around to see if anyone was watching, and then quickly snatched my container and beelined for the exit to the stairwell. Gotcha. I waited. I ate my own, perfectly spiced paella at my desk, trying to look casual. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Just as I was starting to think the extract was a dud, the door to the stairwell flew open and Kevin stumbled out. He was a mess. His face was beet red, and sweat was pouring down his forehead, soaking the collar of his too-tight shirt. His eyes were wide and watering. He wasn't walking so much as power-waddling directly to the break room. He flung open the fridge and grabbed the half-gallon of organic milk someone kept for their coffee. He chugged it, straight from the carton. He drank nearly half of it in one go, milk dribbling down his chin. He then stuck his head under the faucet and ran cold water over his face for a full minute. Sarah from accounting walked in, took one look at him, and asked, "Kevin, are you okay?" He couldn't speak. He just gasped, wiping his mouth with a paper towel, and shook his head frantically before making a beeline for the men's room, where he stayed for the next 20 minutes. It was glorious. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. He never said a word about it. The next day, he brought in a sad-looking turkey sandwich. For the rest of the week, my lunches were safe. I had won the battle, but I hadn't won the war. Phase 2, the olfactory offensive. Kevin, it turned out, had the arrogance of a king and the memory of a goldfish. After a week and a half of peaceful lunches, he must have decided the spicy paella was a one-off fluke, a culinary accident. My delectable beef stroganoff went missing on a Thursday. I was furious, but also impressed by his sheer audacity. The ghost pepper was a warning shot. He had ignored it. Fine. If he wanted to play games, we'd play. Phase 2 was designed not just to punish him, but to make my food fundamentally unenjoyable to steal. I was going to wage a war on his sense of smell. My research led me to the wonderful world of intensely odorous but technically edible ingredients. My first weapon of choice was a safetida, also known as devil's dung. It's a staple in some Indian cooking, but in its raw, concentrated form, it smells like a sulfur pit filled with rotting onions. I made a lentil curry that looked and tasted perfectly normal, but I laced the top layer with a heavy dose of the pungent spice. I also made a separate, a safetida-free portion for myself. The smell in the office kitchen was noticeable. When I microwaved my own lunch, a few people wrinkled their noses. "What is that smell?" someone asked. "New recipe," I said with a sweet smile. Kevin, however, was undeterred. He stole the container. But this time, I imagine the experience was different. He couldn't eat this one in secret. The moment he opened that container, he would have been enveloped in a cloud of sulfurous funk. I pictured him in his car, windows down, trying to stomach his stolen prize while gagging. The next week, I moved on to durian, the king of fruits and the king of stink. It's banned on public transport in several countries for a reason. It smells like a combination of gym socks, turpentine, and sweet, rotting flesh. I made a Thai green curry one of his favorites. I'd noted and mixed in a healthy amount of pureed durian. Again, the smell permeated the fridge, causing Brenda to send out another passive-aggressive email about mindfulness of strong odors and shared spaces. I saw her glaring at my container when she went to get her cottage cheese. Kevin still stole it. The man's greed was truly stronger than his sense of smell. But I noticed something. He wasn't enjoying his thefts anymore. He looked miserable. He would return from his lunch looking pale and disgruntled. He was still winning the battle of possession, but I was winning the psychological war. He was eating my food out of sheer stubbornness now, a grim determination to not let me win. The final act of my olfactory offensive was a beautiful piece of cod, pan-seared and laid over a bed of roasted vegetables. Just before packing it, I drizzled it with a few drops of fermented fish sauce and a tiny bit of surströmming brine I'd ordered from a specialty Scandinavian food website. For those who don't know, surströmming is fermented herring, and it's widely considered to be the most putrid-smelling food on the planet. That was the one that broke him. My lunch remained in the fridge all day, untouched, victorious. I had made my food so foul-smelling that even the hungriest, most entitled thief in the office wouldn't go near it. I could have stopped there. I should have stopped there. But the empty Buria container flashed in my mind. He deserved a grand finale. He deserved humiliation. Phase 3, the grand finale. I planned my final act for the day of the big quarterly all-hands meeting. It was a mandatory 2-hour affair where the CEO would drone on about KPIs and Q3 projections. The entire company would be crammed into the main conference room. Crucially, the conference room was at the far end of the office, and the only nearby bathroom was a single stall, not very soundproof executive washroom. The bait had to be irresistible. Something that screamed decadent and special. Something no one, not even a battle-hardened lunch thief, could resist. I baked a single, perfect, chocolate lava cake. It was rich, dark, and gooey, made with 70% cacao chocolate and dusted with powdered sugar. It was a thing of beauty. And it was laced with a full, food-grade dose of a powerful, fast-acting laxative. The kind that promises gentle, overnight relief on the box, but which I knew, from online reviews, was more like violent, immediate regret. I packed the cake in a clear container to show off its molten, chocolatey glory and put it in the fridge around 10 a.m. with a note: "For Sarah's birthday, do not touch until 3 p.m. Sarah from accounting was a sweet woman whose birthday was actually the next month. I'd already cleared it with her, and she was more than happy to play a part in my little drama. I watched Kevin circle the fridge all morning like a shark. I saw him read the note. I saw the internal conflict in his eyes. But I knew his greed. It was a force of nature. At 11:45, just before he usually took his lunch, he made his move. He grabbed his jacket, then, thinking no one was looking, he snatched the lava cake and disappeared out the stairwell door. A cold, triumphant smile spread across my face. The trap was sprung. I ate my actual lunch, a simple, harmless turkey sandwich, at my desk. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for 1 p.m. At 12:55, Kevin walked back into the office, looking smug and satisfied. He had a faint dusting of powdered sugar on the corner of his mouth. He winked at Sarah as he walked past her desk. The absolute nerve. We all filed into the conference room. I made sure to get a seat near the back, with a clear line of sight to both Kevin and the door. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, started his presentation. Slides filled with charts and graphs flickered on the screen. The air was still and quiet. 20 minutes in, I saw Kevin shift in his seat. Just a slight, uncomfortable wiggle. 5 minutes later, he shifted again, more forcefully this time. He subtly pressed a hand to his stomach. His brow furrowed. Another 5 minutes. A faint sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead. He was starting to look pale. His smug satisfaction had been replaced by a dawning look of horror. He was glancing at the door, then at Mr. Henderson, doing some kind of desperate internal calculation. Mr. Henderson was in the middle of a sentence about market penetration when a low, gurgling sound echoed through the silent room. It was audible. Several people turned their heads. It sounded like a rogue plumbing system coming to life. It came from Kevin. His face turned from pale to a sickly shade of green. He was clenching every muscle in his body. The all-hands meeting was a strict, no phones, no leaving event. You did not disrespect the CEO by walking out. Another gurgle, louder this time. It was a sound of pure intestinal distress. Kevin squeezed his eyes shut. He was a ticking time bomb. He tried to stand up slowly, hoping to slip out unnoticed. But his body betrayed him. The movement was too much. He let out a small, involuntary squeak and froze, half crouched. Every eye in the room was on him now. Mr. Henderson stopped talking. Is everything all right there, Kevin? Kevin couldn't answer. He just shook his head, his eyes wide with panic. And then he bolted. It wasn't a walk. It wasn't a jog. It was a full-blown, desperate, high-knee sprint. He barreled past his colleagues, knocking over a stack of papers, his loafers squeaking on the polished concrete floor. He slammed the conference room door open and sprinted the 50 feet to the executive washroom, his every step a gamble against the inevitable. We heard the bathroom door slam shut with the force of a thunderclap. The conference room was silent for a beat, and then a few people started to snicker. Mr. Henderson, looking utterly bewildered, just cleared his throat and tried to continue with his presentation, but nobody was listening. The damage was done. All we could hear for the next 15 minutes were the muffled, agonizing sounds of Kevin's digestive system staging a violent coup from behind the thin bathroom door. Kevin didn't come back to the meeting. He didn't even come back to his desk. He just vanished. The next morning, his laptop and belongings were gone. He'd sent an email at 3 a.m. resigning, effective immediately. Brenda from HR sent out one final, glorious email. It was about the importance of food safety and warned against consuming food that doesn't belong to you, as you never know if someone has allergies or dietary restrictions. Everyone knew. The entire office buzzed with the story of Kevin's sudden, explosive departure. No one could prove anything, but when people looked at me, they'd smile. A knowing, appreciative smile. Sarah from accounting bought me a bottle of very nice wine. My lunches have been safe ever since. I still bring in my gourmet creations, my little slices of culinary heaven. And every time I open the fridge and see my container, untouched, right where I left it, I feel a deep, cathartic satisfaction. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Sometimes it's a dish best served as a warm, decadent, laxative-laced chocolate lava cake right before a mandatory all-hands meeting. And you know what? It's the most delicious thing I've ever made. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. We appreciate everyone and can't wait to bring more stories your way.